Welcome to the Alchemy of Alignment. It is great to have you with us here today. I'm your ever curious host, Suzy Sanders, and we are joined by a very special guest today. And before we dive into the conversation and I introduce Sam to you, I would like to ask a reflective question. You've taken the time to listen to this episode today, and I'm wondering what purpose means to you. Maybe something to ponder as we explore this episode. So Sam, I am so grateful that you are here today, and we have known each other a long time. But for those of you that don't know Sam's leading the way. In my opinion, he's one of the big driving forces in leading the revolution in school wellbeing. He leads 2 businesses, Student Breakthrough, and the have I said this right? The Educators Coaching Academy, which is a bit of a mouthful for me. And Sam is here to explore the conversation and topic of purpose. So Sam, thank you.
Great to be here, Suzy. I can't wait to see where we go with this conversation.
Yes. So we were just discussing before we hit record. I know I'm all about substance over style, I must admit. And I know our podcast hasn't got the little swanky studio and the little kind of mic that's all branded because we're doing it online. And that was a conscious choice because that allows me to connect with you. So where in the world are you today, Sam?
I'm in a beautiful town called Costa Caparica, just outside of Lisbon. But I'm originally from Milton Keynes.
A little bit less glamorous, sorry to anyone.
A little less glamorous, more sea, bit better weather. But yeah, it's been amazing to move here 2 years ago and to create a new life outside of the UK and the classroom. So yeah, very happy.
Amazing. And you're a former teacher as well, aren't you? And I know we first met, it's coming back to me now, it was at a networking group in Northamptonshire, specifically for coaches, L&D professionals, trainers. And I think that's where we first met.
Yeah, back then I was using networking. Networking's still great. And back then I was using it just to meet parents, connect with other teachers and things like this. So I was doing a lot of like networking in Milton Keynes and Northampton, mainly for one-on-one student coaching. And yeah, a lot of things have changed since we last saw each other. So it's great to have this catch up virtually. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. And you're working with students and you're working with teachers now as well, not internationally.
Yeah, I've found that training or working with students is one thing, but after COVID, I started to see that teachers need lots of support as well. And if you can go through coach training as a teacher, then you're learning loads about yourself. You're getting the answers within as coaching helps you unlock all that stuff. But at the same time, it's this like symbiotic relationship where then you're learning how to better support your students that you're in your classroom. So I think bringing coach training into the classroom helps like the educators and the students. Everyone wins, in my opinion, when that happens. And it's a beautiful thing to bring into education.
Oh, it really is. And I think, having done some coach training myself recently, everybody wins when those things are aligning. But Sam, before we digress so early on, because I do love a tangent, but what does purpose mean to you?
Yeah, purpose for me is that, I guess it's that fire in the belly, I would call it. It's that thing that gets you psyched and motivated every single day to do that thing that you were put on this earth to do. And for me, there's this quote that I love, and I think it's my purpose, which is that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. And if you're listening to this, that should probably get you pumped up because, why do people go through coaching, counseling and therapy as adults? Because they've had challenges in childhood mostly. So the stronger, more resilient we can make our children, then the less challenges there'll be when they're adults. And that's the thing every single day. That is my purpose. Now, whether that's training teachers to become coaches to better support the kids, whether it's working with students one-on-one. I'm running a wellbeing festival in 2 weeks out here in Lisbon for an international school, all about wellbeing, connection, resilience, things like this. So whatever guise that purpose comes in, it follows the same route, which is helping build strong children for the future. And I think alongside that, someone's probably shared this podcast so far, but that quote that I might butcher this a little bit, but it's something along the lines of, he who has the strongest why can bear any how. So in summary to that, what that means is that if your why is really strong, if you've got a really strong purpose, then any stuff that happens to you or any what, like that gets in the way, yeah, it'll impact you, but you won't lose focus of that single point, that single purpose, which again, for me is education. But what is it for you? It doesn't matter what it is. But I think finding that is really important and getting that fire in the belly, because we're only here around this planet one time, and living your life of purpose and truth is ultimately living your message and being congruent with that and sticking to your word and what you want. So that's what purpose means to me, and a bit of a big answer there.
Oh, it was a brilliant answer. I got goosebumps listening to you, Sam. My goodness. I mean, I've heard and seen that quote shared so many times. And as a mother, I think you made the hairs on my arm stand up a little bit hearing you say that. It's something that I wholeheartedly understand and align to. And having that as, I mean, the why is talked about in business a lot, but I love your description, that fire in the belly, that kind of that get up and go, and how, I'm curious with the evolution, your relocation, with how things have evolved for you over the past few years. How do you make sure you stay connected to that fire and that why and that purpose, which you so clearly and so eloquently expressed?
Yeah, I think it's always there to be reminded of and I'm a big visual person, and I think the more you can visually show where you want to get to or the life you want to live, the better. I've got a vision board in my bedroom. I've got this whiteboard here with, at the moment actually it says process, not outcome, and it's got some targets for what I want to achieve with schools. But it's interesting when you've got that fire in the belly and that purpose, you can go in so many different directions. You know, I left teaching in 2018, obviously nearly 6 years ago now. And all I left was to run a business called Student Breakthrough, which was coaching students one-on-one on their mental health, overcoming anxiety, growing in confidence. And that was in Milton Keynes, in coffee shops, driving around, working with kids one-on-one. And that went into then schools. And then I was running family events and parent events and podcasts and online courses. And then that went into then training teachers. And again, creating this business has then allowed me to relocate to Lisbon, where I moved 2 years ago. Didn't know anyone. And now I've moved to a new town where I knew no one again. And now I'm working with the British School of Lisbon, St. Julian's School, which are some really big international schools here, in September, and training their staff. And I was training the principal of this school. And I was like, man, 6 years ago, I was a secondary school history teacher in Towcester, just outside Milton Keynes, in between Northampton. And now I'm here. And I think when you've got that fire in the belly, the purpose, it allows you to create a life that you want, that you live life on your terms. And I think when you have that purpose, you're not the victim of circumstance, or you're not reacting to life, you're creating life, and you're challenging yourself and you're growing. And then all of a sudden you end up living next to the Atlantic Ocean, like training these schools. So that purpose and that fire leads to creation, but you don't know where it's going to go. And being reminded of that is super important as well.
Yeah. And it's really funny because one of my things at the moment, I keep reminding myself, it's this, that finding comfort in discomfort. That, you know, when sometimes we talk about growth, and whether that be personal or professional or commercial or any type of growth, like it does get pretty uncomfortable sometimes when you are expanding or you're moving or you're relocating or you're focusing on those bigger things that you want to achieve, because growth can be uncomfortable. So what's some of the things that you've seen on your journey that have helped with that discomfort, if you agree, Sam? I mean, how do you feel about discomfort, or when you're treading into the unknown? What are some of the feelings that come up for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of that treading into the unknown is discomfort. And Phil Stutz, who's a great psychotherapist, if you read any of his books, the three certainties, of life: are pain, uncertainty, and the need for constant work. So life is going to be painful. There's going to be painful moments. It's also uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen. And the need for work, for me, is that element of growth. And it's reminding yourself in the moment of when you feel like an imposter, when you feel, who am I to do this? When you feel like, oh, this is a risk. it's actually reminding yourself that that is the moment of growth. That's you evolving into the person that you want to become. Because that's really it. Like, you've got the current person that you're being and the person you want to become. And in the middle of that is sort of like anxiety, discomfort, pain. But actually, by taking action and moving forward, then you're closing the gap, and then you're eventually becoming this person that you want to live up to. And I think as human beings, I know that keeps moving. You know, if there's that, I love that little post-it note you see on LinkedIn sometimes. It's like, it's the version of you 5 years ago could see you, they'd be so proud of your success. And it's reminding yourself of that sometimes as well, being like, wow, this is how far I've come. Measuring the gain, not the gap. And that's another, just a little side point here. A great book from Dan Sullivan called Gap versus Gain, which is where you measure your success. Because it's quite easy for me to sit here and be like, well, I want to work with an international school in every country, let's say, as a game. It's not my goal, by the way. Let's say it is quite a lofty goal, right? And if I measure myself from where I am now, it's like, oh man, I'm so far away from that. Like, I'm so far from that, achieving that. I've only worked with like 5 international schools, oh man, I'm beating myself up. But if I look back, right, if I go back to 6 years ago, I was in my classroom in Milton Keynes teaching history, and I was, that was just a teacher. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, wow, I've actually come so far in that space of time. And I think that's one way to measure your growth. And if you're feeling discomfort, it's actually embracing that as well. Like, I'm learning a lot about myself in this current moment. How exciting, because that's never going to stop. Like I said, that person you're being and becoming, for me, almost seems to like just keep moving further down the road. I think one thing I get sucked into is I think one day I'll be the Buddha under the Bodhi tree and find the B word of balance or enlightenment. And then I've reached the pinnacle. And I do generally weirdly still believe this is the case, even though I know it not to be true, if this makes sense. It's this kind of bizarre setup.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Sam. I was just going to say for me, purpose is a journey. And maybe this is playing into your whiteboard kind of process outcome. Was it process or was it progress outcome?
Yeah, process, not outcome. Yeah.
Process, not outcome. Do you ever arrive? Big question.
No, I'd say you don't. I'd say there's always those 3 certainties. There's always pain, uncertainty, and need for constant work. Because like right now, again, if I went back to Sam in 2018, I said, hey, mate, you'd be living in Portugal, and you'd have an amazing apartment, you'd have an amazing relationship, you'd be working with the top schools, blah, blah, blah. I'd laughed in your face. But now here I am, and being honest with you, because I'm a human being, I still don't feel content. And it's actually, it's doing the work on that, I think, is important as well. Like, in the moment, like, what's actually going well for me, what am I grateful for in the moment, instead of thinking, again, the gap, what I don't have. It's like, well, you've created this. And I think that word creation is so important when it comes to purpose. Like, creating the life on your terms, linking to your purpose can do that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I was going to say, what else do you think 2018 Sam would say then of your life right now?
Well, someone shared with me once, the 2 people you got to make proud, and I love this, is your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. So you think of your inner child, basically, like, would they be looking up at little Suzy, be looking up at big Suzy, being like, yeah, Suzy, like, you've done well. And then Suzy in her retirement home when she's 80 or wherever you'll be, hopefully living a lot longer than that, would she be proud of you in that moment? And I think I could go back to that moment in 6 years ago when I was like 27. Yeah, 27. And he'd be so proud. And he'd be so proud of and I think, again, when it comes to fire in the belly and purpose, the word persistence also links to that, because there's been so many times where I've been so close to quitting and changing tack. And this is actually, I'm going to be really honest, even recently I felt this. It's like, this offer's not right. Am I really aligned with what I'm doing? I'm still helping, and trying to work this out. But it's that persistence and sticking in the game is the most important thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, but life in general as well. But if your purpose is super strong and aligned, then you're going to be sticking in the game. You're going to be more persistent. And then, you can start living the life that you never thought was possible.
Oh, you're so right. And what a beautiful kind of, I think as human beings, maybe this is just my perspective or my experience coming through here, but we can get so caught up in the past, we can get so caught up in the future. And actually, that kind of inner child, elder self thing that you just shared there, that's a really lovely kind of mental check-in with yourself, isn't it? Of actually, where am I today? And I'm gonna honor what you shared there about that persistence, because that's the driving force, I think, in business, isn't it? That resilience and that consistency and that drive to keep pushing through, to keep exploring, to keep creating. And I'm really fortunate. I've worked with some incredible businesses and business leaders over the years in various different ways. And I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say I have not spoken to anyone in business that has not had that I'm going to give up moment, whatever it is to them. Like, everybody hits that point of like, oh, at some point. Would you agree? I'm guessing so from what you've said.
Yeah, and multiple times. That's the thing with entrepreneurship, maybe why it's so addictive, because the highs are so high, but the lows can be so crushing, and you might even go through that every single day. Sometimes you go through almost cycles. That's what I'm trying to break out of. It's these sort of 3 month cycles. And also, I'm great at saying yes to lots of things. That's the other thing. When you've got a purpose, it's like mine is to help students become resilient so they don't have problems in the future, as I've spoken about. So what am I doing at the moment? I'm doing one-to-one student coaching. I'm running a mini coach training course for teachers. We run an ICF accredited training program for educators, and I'm doing school training, and I'm doing our wellbeing festivals for schools as well. So the challenge is, when you're so purpose driven, you're likely to spread yourself too thin, or as I call it, the Magpie effect, where you're like, oh, shiny objects, shiny objects, shiny objects. And at times it hits me, and it hits, pretty big burnout. And then it's trying to recalibrate. So my thing at the moment with honesty is, how can I do one or two things really well aligned to that purpose instead of hitting everything 6 out of 10? How can I make two things 10 out of 10?
I love that, Sam. And I mean, I personally suffer from the magpie syndrome myself, and I see it, like you say, it's really common in purpose-driven entrepreneurs. The kind of, as you said earlier, when you are so connected, that fire's in your belly, you have freedom to create. And how do you kind of ground yourself, and how do you channel that in a way that's not at your detriment, right? Because that's normally, you mentioned burnout there. I know I've hit burnout myself a couple of times. I'm still working on that. But like, what are some of the things that you see, I guess, in that kind of as challenges? Because personal burnout, and the reason that we want to keep ourselves tip top, as you've said, so we can really serve and do justice our creative projects. So what are some of the things that you're working on, if you don't mind sharing, that are helping you with those cycles?
Yeah, well, one thing is having the awareness, right? Awareness precedes change. And that's why coaching is such a great process, because it's quite a nice little gateway into talking therapy. So understanding yourself, obviously, on a deeper level is really important. And whether that's coaching, counseling, therapy, or any sort of talking therapy is really useful and handy to be the mirror or the guide, to see where you're going. And when I train teachers in coaching, it's that for them. It's like the first time they've paused and actually reflected on where they're going. So it's having the awareness. And for me, it's the awareness of, okay, I've got to trim the fat here about, what I'm doing and the offers that I'm creating. But I think one of my biggest challenges is that I give so much to other people. I'm running like all those things. They're not, no offense to other types of businesses, but it's not selling I've got my water bottle here. So it's not selling a water bottle. It's not a product business. This is a service business, and it's a business that requires lots of empathy and lots of connection and lots of human relationship building, if that makes sense. And you actually do take on a lot of people's struggles and pains. I had that as a teacher. So my thing is actually, I'm working on at the moment, is how can I care more for myself? How can I, and I have routines and I have structures, and, I have all my like great things lined up. But sometimes when you give so much to others, I do struggle to give to myself. And that's one thing that personally I'm working on at the moment. And I think and again, that links down to well, if I trim down some of these offers, then therefore I'm going to have less of me to give out, if that makes sense, and do the things that I really want to do. But I'm craving that at the moment, Suzy. I've got to be honest. I'm craving that one thing. When I say crave, like I'm craving, it's almost like I'm trying to find the yellow brick road, let's say, but I've got a blindfold on. I'm trying to navigate because I've done so much stuff. And when you're purpose driven, when you're fired up, like you can literally do anything. You can turn your hand to anything. And for me, it's at the moment, I'm still working that out, and I might not this year. I've got some great ideas for the types of things I want to be going and doing. But that's the great thing of purpose as well, because if you didn't have the purpose, then you wouldn't have that spark to create. So it's kind of it's a balancing act to find, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I can definitely resonate with what you're so freely sharing. Thank you, Sam. And it's funny, and that comes back to me, that point of like, do you ever arrive? Because you once you take your blindfold off, you see the yellow brick road, and then something else happens, right? There's another fire, there's another spark, there's another idea, there's more to explore. And it's just part of the beautiful web that we weave in this life, isn't it? And if I may, I'm really curious about some of the experiences that some of the big things that you see in people with coaching. And I've said people because I'm keeping it broad, because I see the coaching space and as sacred. So I'm not asking you to reveal any kind of secrets here, but just if you were to look broadly, some of the things or some of the realizations that maybe, or some of the themes that have surprised you recently. And the reason that I'm asking this is, I know when I did my coach training, I was just completely broken apart in the sense of I've always considered myself to be super self-aware. And then all of a sudden, as you said earlier, awareness leads to change. And then you realize these things about yourself. It's like, oh my God. So I'm wondering if there are any themes that have cropped up recently for you that you found interesting.
Yeah, one thing that I've been seeing, so I run 2 coaching groups. One finished in June, the other one's just kicked off with teachers. And it's primarily focusing on themselves, but also learning skills to better support their students. So it's that 2-for-1 nature I was talking about. But I think for me, the biggest challenge that I see in teachers, and you could say broadly people, if you want to say that, and I fall into this trap as well, is we don't ever realize how truly powerful and strong we are. And someone can tell you that, but until you actually start tapping into your own unique gifts and talents and expressing that and owning that, then you can start leveling up. I mean, it's also how easy it is for people to play small, I think, is another thing. One thing I'm really good at as a coach is calling people up. Not calling people out, calling people up. So I love challenging people. I love playing people high, calling people up to a higher level, because so many people will set low standards or low bars because that's just what they know. But it takes action to create the new possibility. It takes action to create the new purpose, the new life, whatever it is. Like if you've got someone who's underconfident, undermotivated, or feels anxious, it's great they feel or think that way. But one thing I'm bringing more into my coaching is that while you can acknowledge that and appreciate that, ultimately the only thing that's going to pull you through or push you through is the action, the momentum to make the change. And that's the biggest thing. If it's taking action, it's actually a little bit more of a challenge, more of a stretch, and calling people out and just helping people paint their own pictures and potential. I think once you've left, in my case, teaching, and you set up 2 businesses, and on the surface it looks successful. There's pits of failure for sure. Don't you worry about that. But you realize that actually with the purpose and with the persistence, you can create anything you want, and you can actually start living life on your terms. But it comes down to action. And the biggest thing that keeps people from taking that is that bit of discomfort. And then obviously they go back and they see the potential, and then they go back. But it's those little small steps. And that's why I love coaching. Most coaching is not like this transformational experience. The transformation happens in the session, but some of the transformation happens in the transactional part, which is the action. So like what you're going to go away and do And that then builds your confidence or overcome anxiety or lead to motivation. So that's the biggest thing, people not understanding how truly powerful they are.
Oh, I love that. And calling people up, not out. That is as a gift. It's a gift. I love that as an approach. Oh, Sam. Well, I could probably sit here and listen to you and ask you questions and absorb your answers all day, but we are drawing to the close of our episode, and we've had a book recommendation too, I think, which is always good. And you've shared some powerful insights, and I feel like we're closing down on that, people not always realizing or not feeling connected to how powerful they are. And that feels like a nice place to kind of draw a conclusion here. So Sam, are you how connected to that power are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I am. When you talk about it, again, like language creates reality, and yeah, talking about that gets me really pumped. We've got some really exciting things happening. These wellbeing festivals in so get this right. So in 2 weeks, we're running the 2-day wellbeing festival, and then that night I fly to Munich to train teachers in this new school in Munich. And then I go to the UK and then back to Lisbon to train teachers here, bringing a whole team out from the UK. And it's really super exciting. And one thing that I want to start doing, and I've got this model, and I think it's the future, Suzy, if I'm honest, is to work with international schools. Some of them are 20,000 euros a year to send your kid there. They've got lots of resources, lots of money as well. But partnering that school with a school in a less economically developed country that can't get access to coaching support, and you create this link where a percentage of that school sale then funds coach training for this school, but also you team them up and you might have teachers or students going out and then everyone wins. And that's really where I'm taking it. It might be like ECA Global or ECA School Connected. I don't know, but that's what's really pumping me up at the moment, being the middleman for these two like great organizations to connect and help each other.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And I say this as a mother, it's just, I can see that power, that potential. And I'm a big fan of yours, Sam, always have been. And I know that I'm excited to be following you on all of your platforms to keep connected to your purpose and how it unfolds. And on that note, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Anyone that's going, Sam's awesome, I need to get in touch. What's the best way?
Yeah, my Instagram is at Student Breakthrough, which is my personal Insta. So you can check me out on there. My LinkedIn is Sam Moinet, that's Moinet. Or the website is ecatraining.com.
Amazing. And we'll make sure those links are in for ease. And I feel like I just want to express that kind of quote you said earlier on about and I'm going to ask you to actually about building young people.
Yeah, I'll say it for you, Suzy, if that's all right.
I don't want to mess it up, and you've got the passion and the fire, Sam.
So to end the show, and Suzy, thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it. It's been great to chat to you and connect. But yes, if you're listening to this, remember this one, that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. Thank
you, Sam. I'm glad you did that. Really, really grateful to you and to everyone listening, watching, or taking the time to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.